Hello and welcome to the Political Circus Weekly Podcast. I am your host, Mike-Ursery, and no, this is not a brand new podcast. This is what used to be called the Liberty Ginger Podcast. We're here in 2019 and we are under a new name. But don't worry, the show still has the same kind of format. I will still be here recapping all the hilarious, awkward, and completely nonsensical news from the previous week, as I've been doing for the past 10 episodes. This is episode number 11. The Think Liberty Network took a holiday break, and we have resumed putting out shows as of January 7th. This is January 12th. This is the first episode of the new year that I am doing, and I hope that everyone had a very happy new year. I hope people have seen their 2019 get off to a good start. I, on the other hand, had a bit of a clumsy start to 2019. I can explain that, and by clumsy, I mean I sliced my finger open. I'll tell you what happened here. I was making breakfast one morning. I was trying to cut up a mango, and I don't know why cutting up a mango is so complicated for me. I don't know, maybe I just need to sharpen my kitchen knives, maybe. But whatever it is, I was trying to slice up a mango while making breakfast, and it's just something about cutting up the mango is just complicated. I blame the pit that's in the middle of it. And I was using one hand to hold the mango steady on the cutting board, and I'm trying to cut it up with the other one. The knife slipped, and it caught my index finger. So that's how my new year has started. Hopefully it's not an indication of things to come, but in that same sense, I do hope that your new year has started off better than mine. But I can tell you who is not seeing a not so great to their 2019, and that is the United States government. Although I will say this, that we are seeing history in the making before our very eyes with this. Yes, this partial government shutdown, it's only a partial shutdown because only the parts of the government that have not been funded yet, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Labor, and a few other departments within the federal government still are not funded. Those parts of the government are shut down. And as long as it gets to the end of January 12th, this will be the longest partial government shutdown in the history of the United States. 3 weeks. This shutdown began at the start of the final week of 2018, and now here we are 2 weeks into 2019, and we're still in the very same spot we were when this shutdown began. President Donald Trump is in a standoff with congressional Democrats over border security and over the wall that he promised when he campaigned back in 2016. Here we are now in 2019. We are nearing the official start to the the third year of his presidency, and still no wall. And the dispute over the wall has led to the longest partial government shutdown in the history of this country. So first off, congratulations are in order. Congratulations, U.S. government. You have managed to raise the bar for the next time this sort of thing is to happen. And of course, that is a joke. I'm not cheering on for the government to be shut down. You know, a lot of libertarians love the idea of the government being shut down, but at the same time, I also think about the 800,000 people who either are showing up to work and not receiving a paycheck, or they have been told to go home and not come back until the government reopens. And those are the real people who are losing in this government shutdown. All this talk about who is going to fold, who is going to lose in this battle between congressional Democrats and Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress, because they're at this big dispute right now over border security. But the real losers the real losers in this thing right now is the people who are either working without pay or are just out of work right now. And one thing I can say is that if I was one of those people and I was a federal employee and I was in that situation, what I would be doing right now is I would be looking for a new job. A job that does not depend on legislation being passed. Because legislation has still not been passed yet, and that has put these people in the situations that they are in, where they're wondering about how they're going to pay their bills going forward, how they're going to put food on the table for themselves and for their families going forward. So I would be looking for a different kind of job if I was in that situation. But, it's still something to think about. There are a lot of people, 800,000 people that are in a situation where they're going to be really squeezed financially going forward if this government shutdown if it doesn't end anytime soon. And who knows if it will end anytime soon, because Trump already said that he would keep the government shut down for months, even years, exact words that he used, months, even years, to get his wall. I don't know if it will actually go on for that long. No one knows if it will go on for that long, but we are getting very close. We're only 9 days away from day number 30, and that would be a whole month of this partial government shutdown. Earlier this week, the president took to primetime television to lay out his case for stronger border security and for the wall that he wants to place on the southern border. He presented that case to the American people. Followed by that was a rebuttal from Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. It looked kind of like a State of the Union night type of thing where the president would speak, and then one or two people of the opposing party would give their rebuttal at the end. By the way, State of the Union later on this month, January 29th. I can only imagine the virtue signaling that will take place that day. So he gives a speech from his desk inside the Oval Office, and he laid out some statistics while he was giving the speech, namely crime statistics. He started out by saying that there have been 266,000 arrests of illegal aliens at the border, saying that these are illegal aliens that have criminal records, those being the ones who were arrested at the border. President Trump also said that there have been 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings. And I'm just being a smart aleck when I say this, but aren't all killings violent? The president spoke very eloquently, and he had kind of a soft tone to his voice. Now, I wasn't able to watch this live. I went and found it later on YouTube. And while I watched it and I listened to him speak, I couldn't help but feel like I was watching a Sarah McLachlan commercial. The one that plays her song Angels, and it shows all the clips of the abused animals, the abused cats and dogs, and then she's asking for a pledge to help abused animals. That's what I thought of while I was watching the president speak. Another thing that he did during his speech was he had brought up the story of Ranil Singh. Ranil Singh is a police officer in California who was murdered by an illegal immigrant on January 2nd. That person's name, Gustavo Perez Arriaga. On the night of January 2nd, Singh pulled over Arriaga for a suspected DUI. Arriaga shot Singh and then fled the scene. He was later arrested on January 5th. This is according to several news reports. I had seen it from the New York Times. He was arrested on January 4th just out Bakersfield, and police have said they believe that he was making his way to Mexico when he was arrested. Police also said that Arriaga crossed the border illegally some time ago, and he worked as a farm laborer, and they said that he also bragged on social media about being a member of a street gang. So the president uses that story in his 8-minute speech. And yes, while that is a very tragic and unfortunate event, Donald Trump is taking a page out of the politician playbook by invoking emotion while trying to get his point across. We've seen this from in my lifetime, I've seen this from every single president. But there is one thing that Trump said during his speech that really caught my attention. And when he was talking about the immigration system in this country, he called it a broken system. And he is right about that. Our immigration system is broken. For one thing, the naturalization process is extremely long and bogged down by bureaucracy. But at the same time, the process is just really, really expensive. Like, to file an application for naturalization costs $725 as of 2018. This includes a $640 citizenship application fee and then $85 fee for a background check. You have people who come here usually with nothing, and they don't have the money to pay for this, and you're wondering why they enter illegally? I'm not disputing the fact that, yeah, there are some people who come here and they're bad people and they want to do harm. But think about all the other people who are not like that. Think about the people who legitimately come here looking for a better life. And then as soon as they come here, it's like, oh, well, you have to pay over $1,000 if you want to be a legal citizen in this country. Not to mention the cost of a green card just to be a legal resident in this country. It's also a lot of money. Not to mention you have to sit before a judge and answer certain questions. And in some cases, you need to have an immigration lawyer, which also costs money. And yeah, immigration system in this country really is broken. After the president finished speaking, then it was time for Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to give their rebuttal. And that looked awkward, to say the least. You have two people staring into a camera kind of angrily, and there's a hallway behind them, and it looked like something out of Stephen King's The Shining. Nancy was the first one to speak, and one of the first things that she said during her speech was that, now the way she put it was that the Democratic House of Representatives had passed Republican Senate legislation. I don't know what she meant by that, because yes, the Democrats did pass a bill, and yes, there were some Republicans in the House who voted for it. But around that same time, Mitch McConnell, who's still the Senate Majority Leader, said that the Senate isn't going to waste time on a bill that isn't going to pass the Senate and that the president isn't going to sign. So I don't know what she meant by that. Of course, same time, I have trouble understanding Nancy a lot of the times when she speaks, but that's beside the point. Nancy continued on by saying that the president is rejecting these quote-unquote bipartisan bills, and she also brought up how he said that Mexico would pay for the wall, which is what he said during the 2016 campaign. And then he said later that the wall would be paid for through a new trade agreement with Mexico. She also accused Trump of holding people hostage during this government shutdown. Of course, she's talking about the people who, like I said earlier, are either working without pay or they were sent home and told not to come back until the government reopens. And once she was done speaking, it was time for Chuck to deliver his speech. And one of the first things that he said was that President Trump is attempting to govern by temper tantrum. He said, in his own words, democracy does not work that way. No president should pound the table and demand he get his way, or else the government shuts down, hurting millions of Americans who are treated as leverage. I'll say one thing about Chuck Schumer real quick, and I'm going to kind of change the topic just slightly here. Do you remember the meme a while back? I think it was around November, whenever Trump announced that the U.S. was going to place sanctions on Iran again, and he put out that meme that said sanctions are coming. It looked like HBO's Game of Thrones. It was in that same sense because the saying from Game of Thrones, winter is coming. Well, he puts out another one later on. This came out at the start of the year. It was in the same style, but this time it said, "The wall is coming." And Trump had tweeted this from his Twitter account. And then Chuck had tweeted out later where he said, "Enough with the memes." Really, Chuck? Really? Enough with the memes? This is 2019. And memes have become a very subtle form of communication in our society. As cheesy as that meme looked, well, both of those memes really, as cheesy as they looked, you do have to give the White House some credit because they are adapting to social media trends. So the president gave a speech to the American people, laid out his case. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer gave their rebuttal. But at the end of the day, no minds were changed. The right still wants the wall. The left still does not want the wall. Absolutely no movement. Government shutdown nearing the end of week number 3, 21 days, and it goes on. So this government shutdown and the standoff between Democrats and Republicans over border security has taken up most of the airtime into the new year, but there's still, we have a newly sworn in Congress. We have we have a handful of freshman Democrats in Congress now who have managed to get some airtime, albeit not for the best of reasons. First of all, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in particular is one of those who has gotten some airtime. And there was one story that involved her. And this is a story that had so much cringe, you would think we were still in 2018. And the story I'm talking about is the story that pertains to her feet. Yes, you heard that correctly. Her feet. There is an image that was making the rounds in subreddits and also in 4chan, because everything appears on 4chan these days. But it was an image of a person sitting in a bathtub. You can see the woman's feet. You can also see her hand. She's holding a vape pen, and you can kind of see a reflection in the faucet in the tub, but you can't really tell who it is. And according to Vice, their website Motherboard, they had to talk about this, and the post is titled "Mommy's Titties on the Faucet," and overlaid on the photo it says Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez Instagram post 9/3/2016. Now, yeah, this Instagram post is from 2016, but it is not from Miss Cortez's Instagram. And we know this now. Well, first of all, we know who it belongs to now, thanks to Vice. But originally, we learned that it was not her because it was debunked by a foot fetishist. Yes, a foot fetishist who is a member of this website called WikiFeet, which I haven't been there myself. I really don't want to go there. But according to Vice, this is a website that holds several images of feet belonging to celebrities and public figures. And this came out on January 6th. Not even a weekend. 2019 is already worse than 2018. The Vice article says that there is a small collection of Congresswoman Cortez's feet on the WikiFeet website, and it says these are photos of her wearing either sandals or open-toed heels. As much as I want to be surprised by this, I just can't. As much as I've seen in my lifetime, nothing surprises me anymore. And the foot fetishist that Vice spoke with in this article, it is a Reddit user who goes by the name Jokes on You. And Jokes on You told Vice that they are a contributor to WikiFeet. And what it says here, it says, "I'm a contributor to WikiFeet, and even I have never seen a second toe like that." They then linked to a known photo of Ocasio-Cortez's feet and implied that the feet in the Reddit drama thread post couldn't possibly belong to her. Good Lord. The author of the article asked Jokes on You how they spotted the difference, and good grief. He says, "I've sucked enough toes in my life to recognize when something doesn't look right." They told me in a Reddit direct message, "Because we can't dorsi or plantar flex our second through fifth toes independently, I knew it wasn't a matter of the toe being bent. I thought that maybe she has some form of brachydactyly, but her WikiFeet page has clear evidence to the contrary, so it was clear to me that it was not her feet." And the Vice article goes on to say that they found the owner of the photo. It is someone named Sydney Leathers. You might recognize that name. Her name appeared in the Anthony Weiner sexting investigation back from, I think, 2016 maybe? Yeah, 2016. And they said that Leathers had confirmed in a direct message on Twitter that the photograph does belong to her, in which she says that pic is a few years old, and now reaffirms my current stance of no longer posting feet pics unless dudes pay me for it. Wow, so much cringe packed into one article. Welcome to 2019, ladies and gentlemen. Another freshman Democrat who caught a little bit of airtime is Rashida Tlaib. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And she is from Michigan's 13th district. And she had some headlines over the first couple of weeks of 2019. I don't remember exactly when this happened, but she was at a private rally where she told her supporters, she was talking about impeaching Donald Trump, and the way she put it was, we're going to impeach the mother effer. And people really, this sent some people into a frenzy. And now, to her credit, she did own up to it later on, where she said, she had told the Daily Mail, the use of that language was a teachable moment for me, and I understand that I am a member of Congress and I don't want anything that I do or say to distract us. And that is the only thing I apologize for, is that it was a distraction. I will never apologize for being me and for being passionate and being upset. Did it really have to be a distraction, though? Look, she was at a private rally, and yeah, someone took video of it, and that video made its way onto the internet, as everything does in this age. But this is only a distraction because people made it out to be. Come on. People made it out to be a distraction. She was not like in a public setting, and I don't know. I think this isn't as big of a deal as people made it out to be, but maybe that's just me. But I will say this, there is one trend that I've been seeing since a lot of these young Democrats have made their way into the public eye. And, with Tlaib using that word and some of the things that Congresswoman Cortez has said in her interviews, like there are times where she has misspoke. There are times where she said something that she probably did not mean. Look, the right is trying to use smear tactics against these people. And I can tell you, these tactics, they're only going to backfire, because whenever you try to smear someone, all you're going to do is you're going to energize their base and rally their supporters. Look, people try to tweet things about Cortez on Twitter, and she does this thing that she calls a clapback, where she just she has a response, and she's had a response for almost everything that people have tweeted either to her or about her. And all that does, it gets her supporters excited, and it's getting people on the left excited. Do you not remember the election in 2016? Have you forgotten about that already? Because people try to do this to Donald Trump. People try to smear Donald Trump with a bunch of different tactics in the same manner. And all it did was just energize his supporters. And now look, Donald Trump is president. So I can tell you right now, right wing, you're not going to like the outcome of this if you continue down this road. One thing that has gotten airtime as well is this thing called a Green New Deal, which is legislation that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been talking about in her interviews. And whenever you barely scratch the surface of this is on the surface, it looks like legislation that would transition the U.S. to being powered by 100% renewable energy. That's how it is on the surface. But when you really get into it, and when you analyze the entirety of this bill, ooh boy. One place that did analyze this bill was the Foundation for Economic Education, fee.org. She did an interview with Anderson Cooper on 60 Minutes, and this aired on Sunday, which was January the 6th. It aired on CBS. And one thing that she had said during the interview is that whenever you get to what she calls the tippy tops, meaning people who make once you get to the tippy tops on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%. And she went on, and then she started talking about how rich people need to start paying their fair share. How many times have we heard that in the past? And one thing that Fee points out is that her constituents in New York City could see a max income tax rate of 82.6%, and they cited the Americans for Tax Reform for that number. That is, wow, that's extremely high. And then Fee also goes on to talk about interest in the Green New Deal. And there's one thing I find interesting in this. Is that there was a poll from the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication and the George Mason University Center for Climate Change Communication. And they conducted a poll, and one of the first things they saw is that 8 out of 10 Americans hadn't heard about it. But then another thing that they found is that whenever they asked if people would support this Green New Deal, albeit with a very favorable description of the deal that didn't discuss higher taxes, 81% of registered voters said that they would back it. But then Fee points out that in this poll found that whenever you start talking to people about how much these policies are going to cost them, meaning they're going to cost the taxpayers, then that support changes. The poll found that half of the people surveyed do not want to pay anything to fight climate change. And then it said that only 18% were willing to pay at least $100 a month to fight climate change. It's interesting because the poll shows that I believe it said 7 out of 10 Republicans and nearly all Democrats believe that climate change is a problem. But whenever you start asking people about how much of a sacrifice they're personally willing to make, well, people don't want to do that. So people definitely would not like this Green New Deal. And, one thing I find interesting is that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the one who's showing, well, she's not the only one, but she's one of the main ones who are showing a lot of support for this bill. And with them saying that her constituents in New York City could see a max income tax rate of 82.6%. While I do agree with the phrase, people get what they vote for, just because people in the 14th Congressional District of New York are the ones who voted for her and put her in Congress, does that mean that the entire country has to be subjected to the tax rates that she is seeking? Like, you're going to see a lot of Democrats, especially across the Midwest, through the Rust Belt and even throughout the South, who are not going to be on board. Like, one thing that Fee had said was that this bill has not even been brought to the House floor yet. And that's because Democrats are not entirely enthusiastic about it. So yeah, that's, wow. Another thing that Fee had said about this article, or about this bill, what they had called it was, in the article, they call it a Trojan horse for socialism. And that's because of everything else that's in the bill. It's not just environmental policies and not just energy policies in this bill. No, this bill calls for a change to universal health care. It calls for a universal basic income. And the reason being is because people are going to lose their jobs. People who work in some energy industries like coal and oil, it's saying that they're going to lose their jobs. So they would be supplemented by UBI during that transition. And just think about the cost for all of this. There's already been an analysis of Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill, $32 trillion over 10 years, $3.2 trillion per year. Whenever you take into account what of the cost of this universal basic income, they're saying it could be as much as $38 billion over 10 years, so $38 trillion over 10 years, so $3.8 trillion per year. Folks, in 2018, the federal government's budget was at $4 trillion, and people thought that was way too much. And they are right, because that is way too much. The government doesn't even bring in that much. The government is printing money and it's borrowing just to make ends meet for everything that's already paying for. And now you have some people in Congress who want to raise the budget even more. No, that is not going to work. And of course, the Green New Deal calls for paying for all these programs the same way that the federal government paid for the 2008 bank bailout, meaning it would extend quantitative easing programs the same ways that the government paid for World War II and many other wars. The Federal Reserve can extend credit to power these projects and investments. New public banks can be created, as in World War II, to extend credit, and a combination of various taxation tools, including taxes on carbon and other emissions, and progressive wealth taxes can be employed. So in other words, massively hiking taxes, borrowing, printing more money. Then it would use public banks run by unaccountable bureaucrats to carry the whole thing out, according to Fee. Wow. This is what people on the right, if they want a way to combat these new, these these rising stars in the Democratic Party, attack these policies and don't necessarily attack the people who support the policies. No, attack the policy itself. And as I was saying earlier, that support for this bill across the Democratic Party as a whole, really, it may not seem that high right now, but years down the road, it could, because there was a poll conducted in 2017 by a group called Victims of Communism, and the poll found that nearly half of millennials support socialist policies. So, focus on that. Focus on that and not on things that people say, or attack someone's intelligence, or attack the way they speak, or anything like that. No, focus on that instead, because whenever you have people who have a favorable view of people like Che Guevara, Joseph Stalin, Vladimir Lenin, Mao Zedong, that is only going to get worse in the future, because I can tell you right now, people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib and some of these other freshman Democrats, these are millennials, and they favor those kinds of policies. Wait till elections down the road. You're going to see more of them in Congress. Of course, is anyone going to heed that advice? Of course not. Given this current political climate that we're in right now, they're just going to continue on down that same road. The road that got Donald Trump elected is going to get more of these Democratic socialists on the left elected. And I will have another episode for you the following Saturday. Who knows, but maybe by then we'll be at the end of day 28 of the government shutdown, and who knows how long that's going to go on for. I'd like to thank all of you for listening to episode number 11 of the newly named Political Circus Weekly Podcast. As I said, I am your host, Mike-Ursery. This is one of the podcasts with the Think Liberty Network. You can find the Think Liberty Network at most places where podcasts are hosted. If there is a place you'd like to go to listen to your podcast and we are not there, let us know. And we will see about getting the Think Liberty Network put on those platforms. Thank you to everyone for listening. Happy New Year.